Hello, Sambazaji. This is Sambaza with the Sambaza podcast. Can you believe it? We are done with week number 2. Really happy for how we have done this particular podcast and how it's come up. I have really enjoyed myself on this particular podcast. Can you imagine? I've listened to 14 podcasts, the most I've ever done in a year. This is amazing. And I have gone through an amazing week 2 of new podcasts. I'm going to read them out and say a few things about them. Progressive Podcast by Gigi, diaspora podcaster. I think she's either from Ethiopia or Eritrea. Not sure. We'll confirm that. But it talks about money issues and very precise, quick to the point, and you love it. I think her voice projection, great. True Crime Kenya went into it worried about what was going to happen, worried about how it's going to be on my psyche because I'm scared of movies. That's another story. We'll talk about it. But I'm scared of scary movies. That's what I wanted to say. Horror movies, precisely. This one was great because the context and the way it was put out, great quality, great presentation, step by step, and leaves you hanging, not hanging as such, but leaves you in a greater mood and wanting to know more. Doesn't have any gory details, just plain nice and great podcast to listen to. Viewpoints with Brenda. Now, Viewpoints with Brenda, she's a lawyer and she interviews people. I listened to 2 of the podcasts. Now, I listened to one usually by Nicholas Opio, who's an advocate, and he does some advocacy, but he's now in California. And then Mudhoni Waigwa. But the reason why I listened to Mudhoni Waigwa is because I did Mudhoni's podcast, Moments with Nderu, a couple of days before this particular podcast. So when I saw it on the list, I'll say, oh, wow, why don't I do that? So I went on and listened to it. Next was What's Up Zambia by Clementina. This was a well-prepared podcast. She is a musician, poet, and broadcaster. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. So what she does is she was doing some type of research, from what I understand. But the way she was talking to the people that she was interviewing, she understood them. Like I said in my review, different spaces, but when she came in, they were having a great conversation. She was able to get in their space and kind of talk about it, let them speak, and she was able to speak in and give in her details because it was some type of knowledge that she had from a different perspective. It's like she was privy to some information that these other guys didn't have, so she was combining both in that particular episode that I heard. Actually, 2 of those particular episodes that I heard. There's also some cultural stories that I added in on my review as well. But like I said, great podcast. The next podcast is 50 Things That Define Zambia by Joram Chitenge. Now, this particular podcast was sort of like a discovery because when I got into it, there was a discovery that I made because one of my podcaster friends, Assorted Immigrant Stories, Zenith Hamamba, had interviewed Joram before. And I was like, wow. So I put that information and you can go listen to it. Now, one thing about 50 Things That Define Zambia, it is one podcast that's a culture podcast, and I love the fact that it told you real authentic stories, and this is what I'm looking for, authentic stories from the continent, and he provides it very well. Next podcast is the East African podcast, Diary of a Muzungu. Now, this podcast is from Uganda, and the lady is a Muzungu, actually Muzungu, and she has a blog which is Diary of a Muzungu. Now, the Diary of a Muzungu is the one that brought about the East African Travel Podcast. I listened to 2 podcast episodes, and these episodes were awesome episodes. I want to say that it is unique in the fact that she turned a blog into a podcast with Great stories. I loved one of the stories because he was talking about my home area, the coastal region, where they were talking about the Colobus monkeys. But in summary, here's what I'll say: we have discovered that some of the podcasts, and I want to say some of the podcasts that I've gone into have kind of not available, and it begs a question about podcasts, uh, whether these podcasts are stopped during the time after pandemic or what it was. But all in all, what I'll say is these give me a great facet from the start to the finish about where podcasting is in the Kenya and in Africa as well. You want to listen to some of these podcasts because what I've found is I have found a better understanding of the podcast so far. We still haven't gone to the other podcasts that I'm going to review, and I might find out more information. With that, Wasambazaji, this is week 2 recap. I'll see you later for the week 3 recap.